Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. It's from Canto 2, Chapter 5, and this morning the text is text 7. We're very fortunate to have His Grace Vishnugada Prabhu, ISKCON Philadelphia, to give a class. Hare Krishna, Prabhu, please accept our humble obeisances.
Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Okay.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava
Kunja
Kunya
Bihari.
Bihari.
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya
Jaya
Radha
Radha
Madhava
Madhava Kunja
Kunya
Bihari.
Bihari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Gopi
Jaya
Jana
Gopi Jana
Vallabha
Vallabha
Girivaradhari.
Giridharadhari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Jaya
Gopi Jana
Gopi Jana
Vallabha
Vallabha
Girivaradhari.
Giridharadhari.
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yashodhanandana
Yashodanandana
Vrajajana
Vrajajana
Ranjana.
Ranjana.
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yashodhanandana
Yashodanandana
Vrajajana
Vrajajana
Ranjana.
Ranjana.
Jamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira
Yamunatira
Vanachari.
Vanachari.
Jamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira
Yamunatira
Vanachari.
Vanachari.
Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya
Jaya
Radha
Radha
Madhava
Madhava Kunja
Kunya
Bihari.
Bihari.
Jai Radha
I think it's stuck a little bit, but we got to be patient.
Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya
Jaya
Radha
Radha Madhava
Madhava
Kunja
Kunya
Bihari.
Bihari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Gopi
Jaya
Jana
Gopi Jana
Vallabha
Vallabha
Girivaradhari.
Girivaradhari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Gopi
Jaya
Jana
Gopi Jana
Vallabha
Vallabha
Girivaradhari.
Girivaradhari.
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yashodhanandana
Yashodanandana
Vrajajana
Vrajajana
Ranjana.
Ranjana.
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yashodhanandana
Yashodanandana
Vrajajana
Vrajajana
Ranjana.
Ranjana.
Jamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna
Yamuna
Tira
Tira
Vanachari.
Vanachari.
Jamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna
Yamuna
Tira
Tira
Vanachari.
Vanachari.
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya
Jai
Radha
Radha
Madhava
Madhava Kunja
Kunya
Bihari.
Bihari.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paribraja Kacharya Ashtottara Sata Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai,
Yay,
Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai.
Jai,
yay,
ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai,
yay,
Ramacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai.
yay.
Jai,
प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय।
Jai,
Yay,
श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरि गोवर्धन की जय।
Jai,
yay,
वृंदावन धाम की जय।
yay,
Jai,
नवद्वीप मायापुर धाम की जय।
Jai,
yay,
गंगा माई की जय।
Jai,
yay,
यमुना माई की जय।
Jai,
yay,
तुलसी देवी की जय।
yay,
Jai,
भक्ति देवी की जय।
yay,
Jai,
समवेता भक्तवृंद की जय।
yay.
Jai.
गौर प्रेमानंदे।
Hari Hari
Hari Hari
Bol.
Bol.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare
Hare Krishna,
Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare
All
Krishna.
glory to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga Hari Hari Bol.
Oh gosh.
Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Shukte Bhakti Vedanta Shami Iti Namane. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirbhisheshunyabadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Om
Namo
Namo
Bhagavate
Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Om
Namo
Namo
Bhagavate
Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Om
Namo
Namo
Bhagavate
Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Reading, studying, discussing Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto, 5th Chapter, 7th Verse. Sabhavan acharit ghorang yattapa susamahita tena khedayase nastvang parashankam cha yachchasi. Sabhavan acharit ghorang yattapa susamahita tena khedayase nastvang parashankam cha yachchasi. Sabhavan acharad ghorang yattapa susamahita tena khedayase nastvang parashankham cha yachchasi. Please chant.
Sabhavana Charadgoram Yattapa Susamahita Tena Kedayase Nastam Parashankam Jayasyashi. Hare.
Hare Krishna. Sabhavan charadghoram Sabhavan charadghoram yattapasu samahita tena khedayase nastvam parashankha cha yashchasi. Hare Krishna.
Oh, you like that other tune better, huh?
स भवान् आचरत् घोरं यत्तपः सुसमाहिता तेन खेदयसे नस्त्वं पराशङ्कं च यच्छसि.
Thank you. Anyone else like to chant? You're welcome to if you like. No? Sa he bhavan, your good self, acharat, undertook. Ghoram, severe. Yatapa, meditation. Su samahita, in perfect discipline. Tena, for that reason. Kedayase, gives pain. Na, ourselves. Twang, your good self. Para, the ultimate truth. Shankam, doubts. Cha, and yachchasi, giving us a chance. Yet, translation, yet we are moved to wonder about the existence of someone more powerful than you when we think of your great austerities in perfect discipline, although your good self is so powerful in the matter of creation. Purport. Following in the footsteps of Sri Narad Muni, one should not blindly accept his spiritual master as God himself. A spiritual master is duly respected on a par with God, but a spiritual master claiming to be God himself should at once be rejected. Narad Muni accepted Brahma as the supreme due to Lord Brahma's wonderful acts in creation. But doubts arose in him when he saw that Lord Brahma also worshipped some superior authority. The supreme is supreme, and he has no worshipable superior. The ahangropasita, or the one who worships himself with the idea of becoming God himself, is misleading. But the intelligent disciple can at once detect that the supreme God does not need to worship anyone, including himself, in order to become God. Ahangrahopasana maybe one of the processes for transcendental realization, but the ahangopasita can never be God himself. No one becomes God by undergoing a process of transcendental realization. Narad Muni thought of Brahmaji as the Supreme Person, but when he saw Brahmaji engaged in the process of transcendental realization, doubts arose in him, so he wanted to be clearly informed. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Nama Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Katamahyam Dadati Shapandantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Before speaking, I would like to ask for the blessings and permission and blessings of all devotees, and particularly those who are senior by age or advancement in Krishna consciousness.
Hare Krishna. Yeah,
We're speaking from the first part of the 5th chapter of the 2nd canto. And this chapter begins with Narad Muni, the eternal spaceman and the preceptor, Acharya, in the Gaudiya Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, asking questions to Lord Brahma, his father and spiritual teacher. This is recommended for everyone, especially in the human form of life. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Now that you and I have this human form of life, instead of asking questions about what's the weather like today, or how can you make money, or what's the greatest score on the football field, the recommendation is Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Ask questions about who you are, who is the Supreme. And that's exactly what Narad Muni is doing. So the beginning of the chapter, he asks, he asked Lord Brahma, tell me what the truth is of the soul and the super soul. That how is it that there's creation? How is this creation conserved, and under whose control is it? I know that everything is under your grip, but what is your source of knowledge? Under who is this whole cosmic manifestation? Under whose protection is it existing? So these are very important, wonderful questions that we can also meditate and consider. And Narad Muni is giving the example. He asked these questions to a bona fide spiritual master to get real answers. This is the process of spiritual life. Instead of speculating to understand what the Supreme Personality of Godhead or what the purpose of life is, the best thing is to inquire and hear from a spiritual authority. Therefore, Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, you know the verse, Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadikshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. If one wants to know the truth, then the best process is to approach a tattvadarshi, someone who knows the truth, and inquire from them. But not just inquire from them, hear from them, and also do some service. Then you can know the truth. In the material world, people are thinking, I don't want to have to listen to somebody else. I want to find out myself. I don't want to have any authority. Why should I believe, or why should I take what somebody else tells me to do? But the fact is that we're always doing that anyway. Some of us, you might go to school, and in the school, to make progress, if you challenge the teacher at every step, and you say, I don't believe what you have to say, then how much progress will you make? And in Madison Avenue, or what they used to call Madison Avenue, they spend billions of dollars trying to get people to think in advertising the way they want them to think. So we have an opportunity as human beings to find the best source of knowledge and inquire from that person. If a person knows, then the simple method of understanding what is true is to find a person who knows the truth and ask them. And if they're kind enough to tell you, then immediately you can know. Srila Prabhupada gives the example of a young child asked the parent, "Oh, what is this? Oh, that's a horse. What is that? That's an elephant." So immediately, just by hearing the version of the parent, the child can understand. So in Lord Chaitanya's discussion with Ramananda Roy on the banks of the Godavari River, they were talking about what the goal of life is, very important question, and how to attain it. And Lord Chaitanya was posing as the student, and Ramananda Roy was answering as best he could. So Ramananda Roy gave numerous answers to the question, how do you attain the goal of life? And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one after another, said, no, I don't believe so. That is external. And finally, he settled on the verse, Stane stita shrutikatam tanuvagbanobhi. Stay in your position, wherever you are. You're a householder, sannyasi, brahmachari, student, whatever. And hear from the authorized source, someone who knows. And that's the beginning of the process of attaining the goal of life. That's the beginning. And then there's more. So Narad Muni, being the perfect acharya, he's demonstrating for us that system so that we can be more sure that that's the way to do things. There are many opinions. Every Muni has a particular opinion. And that's what makes them thinkers. But the best process is to find a self-realized soul, if you can, and inquire from them. In this connection, there's a nice exchange that Giriraj Maharaj asked Srila Prabhupada. He said, I thought this was relevant. There are so many swamis and yogis. Each one presents a different method of self-realization. And each one claims that his method is the truth, is the best. How can I know which one is actually the best? So what do you think Srila Prabhupada replied? I'm asking. Any guesses? Doesn't have to be right. I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but that's okay.
If it's backed up by Shastra.
Okay, if it's backed up by Shastra, yes. Others, yes. No other attempts? All right. I'll give you a hint here. Okay. Srila Prabhupada replied, so what was the question? There's so many swamis and yogis. How can you actually find what is the truth? Right. Everybody has a different opinion. Yeah. So how can I know which one is actually the best? Srila Prabhupada replied by asking another question. He said, what is your goal? Do you want to become God, or do you want to serve God? How can, if you want to become God, that means that right now you're not God. How can not God become God? God is always God. Krishna is God. He never has to become God by meditation or yoga. When he is playing on the lap of Mother Jashoda, he's God. When he is speaking Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he's God. He's always God. He never has to become God. You can become godly, but you cannot become God. God is in your heart, and he is ready to help you. If you sow the seed of service to God, then God will give fresh air and sunlight to make that seed grow. Water the seed by chanting. God is within you. He is in your heart. He's ready to help you if you want to serve him. But if you want to become God, why should God help the competition? Anyway, I thought that was relevant. Interesting response. So it included what Parikshit Prabhu said, but it went a little further as well. So there are many ideas, but this is the idea given from the Vedic literature. And in this purport, Srila Prabhupada begins his discussion of this verse by noting that the spiritual master, an intelligent disciple, doesn't accept the spiritual master as God. And how is that seen in this particular verse? Did you note that? I'm asking.
If you don't mind repeating the question, I didn't quite.
Okay, yeah. So how is it in this verse that Narada Muni is not accepting Brahma, Lord Brahma, as God?
His meditation, he's
Yes,
meditating,
yes,
so
yes.
there must be a high power he's meditating
So
on.
he's performing meditation at, it says Gautam, great austerities for God realization. So that means that if he has to do all these different things, as we mentioned in that piece by Giriraj Maharaj, that means there must be some higher truth that he has to appeal to and to get knowledge and serve. So an intelligent disciple doesn't confuse the spiritual master as God, actually. Although we say Shakshadhari Tvena Samasta Shastri Uktas Tata Bhavyata Eva Shadbi Kintu Praborya Priya Eva Tasya. What's the last line?
Vande Guru Sri
Vande Guru Sri
Charanars.
Charanaravinda. Thank you. Yeah. So the prayers by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his Guru Ashtakam, 7th prayer, he says, we accept the spiritual master, Shakshad Hari. Shakshad means directly Hari. And all the Shastras say so. Uktas tatat bhavyata eva shad. Even the sadhu says so. Why? Kintu praborya priya eva tasya. Because that spiritual master is very dear to Krishna. Therefore, he can deliver you Krishna. But he is not actually Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Important distinction. These are fine distinctions that take a little intelligence. But because people don't pay close attention to these things, just like a child with attention problems has difficulty paying attention to the details of some kind of lesson. So similarly, those on the spiritual path, if we're not careful, we can become baffled and miss these important details. The spiritual master is God and not God. Oh, this is confusing. Is God, how is it? In the sense that he can deliver you God. So as good as God is, but not God, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Prabhupada gave the example of a gold box and a gold-plated box. Both are gold. But we see in the history of religion and the history of the world that many, many people who are promoting themselves as spiritual knowers, they either present themselves as God or their followers deify them after their departure. And there's so many examples of that. So commonly existing in this Western world, we see the example of Lord Jesus Christ. So there's confusion. Was he God? Or was he the Son of God? Or is it just kind of like a mystery? What is the situation? Lord Jesus Christ never said he was God, but afterwards, some of his followers, even to this day, regard him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even though he said, I am the servant of my Father. So there's a difference between the servant and the Supreme, the Son and the Father. At the same time, he said, I and the Father are one. So how do we understand that? People become baffled. Similarly, in Bengal, there's a famous sadhu who's very influential, not only in Bengal, but all over India and all over the world. And he was very fond of saying, I was Krishna, I was Ram, I was Chaitanya, and now I'm who I am. It's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although one might wonder or question if he was really Krishna, Ram, Lord Chaitanya, now why is he changing their philosophies? What Krishna's philosophy was very clear in Bhagavad Gita. Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam braja. Surrender unto me, or give up all other kinds of religion, and I'll protect you. Yepi anya devata bhakta yajanti shadayanvita. Tepi mam eva kaunteya yajanti shad yajanti. What's that last word? Shepi mam yajanti something, I forget. That means those who offer respect and worship to other gods, it's that worship is really meant for me, but is offered without avidi purvakam was the last. Yajanti avidi purvakam. It's offered without proper understanding. So that's Krishna's philosophy in Bhagavad Gita. The same philosophy, exactly the same philosophy, was explained and taught by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu 500 years ago. Lord Krishna said, worship me. Lord Chaitanya said, worship Krishna. But then why are these so-called incarnations? They say, oh, it doesn't matter who you worship. You can worship Krishna, you can worship Durga, you can worship Ganesh, you can worship anybody. Except better not, you can't worship the goat. We kill everything is God, but we kill the goat god or the chicken god, but we worship the poor man. This is kind of the foolishness of people confused by word jugglery. Also, there was one famous person who changed his name from Bhagawan to something else, but he eventually said, oh, there's no God, just he's God. And interestingly, oftentimes these so-called incarnations, they'll decry worshiping the form of the Supreme Lord on the altar, but then we'll find they put their own picture on the altar, and people will worship them. They have their followers worship them. So this is a mishmash, a confusion of things. Even in Islam, they technically reject all forms of God, but there are some branches of Islam where, I didn't know this, but there's I think it's called the Nation of Islam. Maybe you're familiar. But
Yeah, I know them.
yeah, so the founder was named W.D. Farad, W.D. Farad, and later a follower of his was Elijah Muhammad. So anyway, in their theology, they say, oh, W.D. Farad was God in person. God in person. Yeah. Oh. He kind of disappeared and nobody knows what happened to him. But anyway, so this confusion is very prevalent in people who are thinking about religious ideas, spiritual ideas. In fact, you can go on the internet right now, and if you search for videos under this title, You Are God, you can search it, and you'll find many videos about how to meditate and understand that you are God. It's a nice exercise. There's usually some, very ethereal music and some relaxing statements. And oh, you didn't know you were God? As Prabhupada said, you're godly, but you're not God. God is always God. Uh, hmm. Mata parataram nanyat kinchirasti dhananjaya. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that there's no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. So this tendency to want to become God is very prevalent within this material world. We see it in all different kinds of ways. Srila Prabhupada was in Japan, and he went to a meeting of the directors and important persons in the Dynapan printing company in Japan. So when it was a very formal meeting, and he was negotiating the price for printing the Krishna book at that time. It was supposed to have been 1969, maybe early 70. And so all the executives from that company filed in, and they put their card, each one of them put their business card on the table, one on top of each other. And on the top card was the executive president. And according to their position in the company, one card was below the other card, all the way to the bottom where the junior trainees were there. So that was their system, protocol. So anyway, they negotiated Srila Prabhupada negotiated the price of the Krishna book with Tamal Krishna Maharaj was also there. And then afterwards, one young junior executive stayed back, and Srila Prabhupada asked, you know this one? You know this one? He asked the junior executive, what is your purpose in life? Atato Brahma Jigyasa. So you know what the junior executive did? Remember this?
No.
He went to the
No.
stack of cards on the table on the desk. He took his card, which was on the bottom, took it out
Put it on
and
top.
put it on top. Right? This is the world. Yeah, yeah. So everybody within this world is looking to be the topmost person. Why? Because that way you can do whatever you want, and you can think you will enjoy unlimitedly and get people to do whatever you want. And the nth to the nth degree, that is the idea that you and I can become God. You fail at being the executive at Dynapan, the best orator, the best sports person, the best beauty queen or king. But then, okay, you failed at those things, but at least you can become God. That's Prabhupada just sometimes termed that the last snare of Maya. And in relation to that, because Maya is always after you, trying to make you think you can enjoy this way or that way. But when you fail, okay, the final attempt, the last ditch attempt to do that is, oh, you can become God. Srila Prabhupada used to compare it to a cobra with a jewel on its hood. It's ignorance, but a cobra is very dangerous. But with a jewel on its hood that's attractive, oh, it's even more dangerous than a regular cobra. So this idea that I'm the supreme is, that's everybody's trying to be supreme. but with this little jewel that, oh, some spiritual idea that I'm the supreme is even more dangerous. Therefore, it's said by Lord Brahma, Aruya Krichchena Param Padam Tata Patantyo Nadriyushvaram Graya. Even if one goes up to the highest level of the Brahma Jyoti, the impersonal liberation, one must fall down again into this material world to start over. It's not a permanent position by any means. And Srila Prabhupada gave the example, which is very, sometimes we think of as amusing, but it's actually true. There was a yogi who was in the forest meditating, and in his meditation, he was disturbed by a little mouse. And the mouse was squeaking loudly, and finally the yogi paid attention to the mouse and said, "Well, what do you want from me?" And the mouse said, "I'm being chased by a cat. Can you make me a cat?" So the yogi says, "Tatastu, yes." And the mouse became a cat. So some time passed. And then the cat comes back to the yogi and meowing. So, "What do you want?" The sadhu says. And the cat says, "I'm being chased by a dog. What do you want?" "Well, please, can you make me a dog?" So the sadhu, the yogi says, "Tatastu." And the cat became a dog. Then the dog chased by a tiger. And the dog comes to the yogi and says, please help me, I'm being chased by a tiger." So finally the yogi says, okay, makes the mouse a tiger. And then the yogi looks at the tiger and sees that the tiger has big wide eyes and is licking its chops. And he understands that the tiger now, being in this big position and having so much power, is getting prepared to devour the yogi. So what does the yogi do? You know?
Purna Mustika Baba.
Unar Mushrika Baba. Yeah, you become a mouse again. This is the process of the material world. Brahmanda Brahmiti Kono Bhagyavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasade Bhai Bhakti Lata Bij. That we're wandering. Sometimes you might be Brahma, the biggest person in the universe, and sometimes you're like insignificant ant. It goes round and round and round, samsara. How to break that? How to break that cycle is not to endeavor to become the topmost, the biggest person, the most powerful person, the most to use all their power for one's own aggrandizement and personal satisfaction, but to utilize your life, your words, your thoughts, your energy to be a servant of God. Pariprashnena sevaya, to engage in the service of God. That's called bhakti yoga. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that. He said, Naham Vipra, na Chanarapatir, na Varni, na Shudro. I'm not a Brahmin, a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, a Shudra. I'm not a Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas. I'm none of those. What am I? Gopi Bhartar Parakamalayo Dasa 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 Anudasa. I'm just a servant of the servant of the servant of the master of the gopis. That's Krishna. So that position is a safe position to make progress for us in the material world and help us to go back home to Godhead. So this idea that the spiritual master is God is very prevalent within society and various spiritual societies also. Even in ISKCON, in 1970, there was a meeting in New Vrindavan, and the devotees became misled. And there were some people who were preaching that Srila Prabhupada was God, even though, isn't it? So we have to be very careful about this tendency to misunderstand. And the idea is if Srila Prabhupada is God, well, then by practice, we can also become God. So you can have lots of gods running around. That's the idea, isn't it? There's a famous case in the psychological literature about the three Christs of Ypsilanti, Michigan. Have you ever heard of this? In Ypsilanti, Michigan, is a town, of course, in Michigan, where they have a big psychiatric hospital. So it's not unusual for people who are crazy, deluded, to think that they're God or Jesus Christ. So they happen to have three patients in the psychiatric ward, same psychiatric ward in the same hospital, and all of them were professing that they were Jesus Christ. You follow? So it's a little interesting when one Jesus Christ meets another Jesus Christ. How do they work that out? It's kind of mind-boggling. How do they do that? It's not easy. So the same thing happens in this world. Everybody's thinking they're the topmost person, and what happens if they get try to communicate with each other in that level? It's very difficult. Because problems happen. We used to do in the Christmas season. Some of us would dress up as Santa Claus. I don't know if anybody's done that before here, but we would go as Santa Claus and we collect donations for the Hare Krishna movement. So we would say the Hare Krishna movement is helping people around the world become free from the miseries of birth and death by spreading love of God. So whatever you can give, $1 or even a penny, will help tremendously. And then we go up and down the aisle in the subway, and people would give, and we give them a Back to God in magazine. So one of our things we used to do is one person would be dressed as Santa Claus, and another Santa Claus would come in from the other side of the subway car. So there's two Santa Clauses in the car, and they used to blow people's minds, and they'd be very happy. Of course, that's a joking thing, but that's the way it is in the material world. Everyone is thinking that we're God, but the catch, the real secret of life is to learn how to serve God, and then we can be happy. So this idea is part of this verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. We can consider that, meditate on this point. We are tiny. God is great. We are his part and parcel. Therefore, let's really utilize our time, our energy in this life to serve him. And one of the prime methods of serving God is, as Lord Chaitanya kindly said, broadcast, and Srila Prabhupada carried to this country, the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, regularly chanting. And that fixes us as an atom at Krishna's lotus feet and engages us in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead just by chanting and hearing his holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I had one other point I was going to make. I know it's getting late. If you like, in a book written by Bhakti Vikas Swami in Volume 2, he goes in detail on the different Sahajiya groups that were deviant from the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya. And there's generally 12 or sometimes 13 given, like the owls, the balls, Gauranga Nagaris. You've probably heard of these. And each one of them has a particular adjustment or change to the philosophy that distinguishes them from other Sahajiya groups and also from the pure teaching of Lord Chaitanya. So one of them is called, of those Sahajiya, or Sahajiya means someone who takes the philosophy of Krishna consciousness cheaply. It's called the Kartabhaja. I don't know if anybody's heard of the Kartabhaja, but I thought I would read a little bit from there and get your response or reaction, if you don't mind. Is that okay?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, Kartabhaja. The founder of the Kartabhaja sect was a Darvish, Aula Chand. He initially had promulgated worship of Krishna, rejecting demigod worship and the taking of flesh food, yet his teachings incorporated Aula heresies and strongly veered toward the mystical, especially towards impersonalism, as evidenced by the defining principle of his sect, equating the guru as God. After Aula Chand's death, most Kartabhajas accepted the leadership of Karta Ram Sharan Pal, a leading disciple who stressed even more fanatical worship of the incumbent master, acclaiming him to be God incarnate, whose every word and act was to be lauded as divine and blindly obeyed. Thus, Kartabhaja came to be known as a synonym for sycophant. Kartabhajas had their own holy book, consisting largely of songs composed by Dulal Chandra, the son of Karta after Ram Sharana. The most famous dictum was, to be a Kartabhaja, a woman must become a hijra, a man a eunuch. Certain Kartabhajas were reputed as effective magical healers. Although Kartabhajas claimed that Aula Chandra was a re-emerged form of Lord Chaitanya, and many of their practices resembled those of Vaishnavas, their rituals barely mentioned Lord Chaitanya or Krishna. And they also chanted, instead of the names of Lord Chaitanya and Krishna, the names of Kali and Khuda, considering all names equal. Their main pilgrimage was in Goshpur, Nadia district, where was preserved the residence of Ram Charan and his wife Sati, who were identified respectively as the Adi Purush and Adi Shakti, the original female principle. Hordes of Baulas would congregate at Goshpur for an annual 3-day festival, and accordingly, Kartabhajas were often mistaken to be a sect of Baulas. Kartabhaja is also different from Baulas, and indeed from all other upper sampradayas in being well organized and spiritually proselytical. Becoming a powerful revolt against the doctrinaire Goswamis and Smartas, Kartabhaja converted thousands of downtrodden, landless laborers, peasants, and traditional craftsmen by their economic controls and the exclusions of the company, their derogatory term for the Orthodox clergy. In time, Kartabhaja's appeal diminished due to factionalism caused by succession disputes, stinging critiques of their declining moral standards, and disillusionment that the Kartas themselves had become gentry, living well from coerced donations. Srila Saraswati Thakur commented, the worship of Gora, from worship of Gora, one faction has screwed out Guru Bhaja or Kartabhaja. That idea is that the Guru is Krishna, so no need to otherwise worship Krishna. All followers of these independent, mundane intellectuals who adhere to atheistic doctrines claim that they're sensuously mad so-called gurus who resemble worn-out cows that cannot give anything are Krishna. Such followers are themselves attached to sense gratification and mislead many similarly demented people into such offensive activities. Hare Krishna. That's the end of that part. Hare Krishna. Questions, comments, observations, corrections? Anybody? Anybody there?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Did I leave you? Did I lost you? Sarvanga.
Hare
Sarvanga.
Krishna, Prabhu. Please
Hare
accept my
Krishna.
humble obeisance. All glories to
Yeah.
Prabhupada. All glories to the devotees on the call. It's just proving the point by Prabhupada, where he writes in all his small books or wherever that the world is filled with cheaters and the people who want to be cheated. They just like and innocent people who get cheated by these cheaters,
Yes, good
and
point.
misled.
Sometimes when Prabhupada would comment that if you want to buy a jewel, in order not to be cheated, you need a little understanding of what a jewel is. What a diamond. If you want to buy a diamond, you have to have some idea. Otherwise, people will sell you some glass and tell you it's a diamond. So the Krishna consciousness movement, you are doing such valuable service to educate people, to help them understand what is God, what is Bhagavan, Aishvaryasya Samagrasya Viryasya Yashashasriya. The not some toothless person is God. No. I would often talk about my first experience with what I thought was an exalted person. I think I told this story already. When I was in third grade, the president of the United States came to our small town, and it was a big celebration. Everybody, school was let out, and everybody went on to a parade site. And he came. He drove down in a big Lincoln Continental and got out of the car and waved to the crowd. And I was so disappointed because this guy was just an old bald man in a suit. What wonderful thing is that? So that kind of God or president, whatever it might be, is very disheartening. The real God, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is incredibly wonderful. And when Mother Yashoda was concerned that Krishna had eaten dirt, she asked him to open his mouth, and there she saw all the universes present and also herself present. It was wonderful, shocking, wonderful. So that Supreme Personality of Godhead is the person that we are serving under the direction of Srila Prabhupada, your Guru, and Lord Chaitanya. Thank you. Sarvanga Shundar. Other questions, comments?
Yes. Alex, anyone else wants to contribute? Or even some takeaways from this? Because there's quite a bit, comparing people I heard one situation that this was quite a while back, maybe 30 years ago, an announcement that people are imitating, as you were saying, that they were Jesus Christ, but it was in a mental institution. You're talking about that, but they had recorded 2,500 cases of people pretending to be Jesus Christ. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
to know that Jesus.
There's the Ravinda Svarup Prabhu used to talk about this, which was quite interesting. He said, in psychiatry and psychology, there's the idea of the Oedipus complex. And the Oedipus complex was theorized by Sigmund Freud. And the idea is that at a certain point, all young boys, they want to kill their father and marry their mother. Have you heard this? It's like, prior to the age of 5, they have this. So
Yeah.
he compared it to the Oedipus complex is really the same. It's the God project. Everybody wants to get rid of God and become God. That's the impetus in the material world. Everybody wants to be the topmost person and enjoy the facilities of God, just like the mothers, or like Ravana wanted to enjoy Sita.
Although I find that quite disgusting, the idea of marrying the mother.
Yeah,
Anyway.
well, that's Oedipus. Oh, dear Krishna Prabhu.
Yeah, Christopher was.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to you. Yeah, I also heard some time back that in India, there are already 8 or 10 people who are claiming themselves to be Kalki.
I'm
Kalki.
sure. Yeah,
So in
yeah.
one of the TV channel,
10.
yeah, one of the TV channel, they invited all those 8, 10 Kalkis, and they were fighting really live on the TV to prove
Oh,
themselves.
really?
Yeah.
That would be fun to see that.
Yeah, I couldn't find that video. Maybe they took it out, but I heard that really happened that 8 or 10 people were claiming to be Kalkis, and one of the TV channel, they were bold enough to invite all of them, and they just let them figure it out who's the real Kalki, and they were just fighting with each other.
Yeah.
So
Didn't
Prabhu,
who's? Oh, I'm
yeah,
sorry. I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Please
Thank
go
you
ahead,
for
Prabhu.
that.
Yeah,
The-
one
the- the-
question I have is like you were
Mhm.
also mentioning that that this question was also asked to Srila Prabhupada. And there are so many paths, so many, or apparently paths, spiritual paths, and of course, in this short lifetime, we cannot follow everything. So how can one stick, uh, you know, himself or herself to one path? And yeah, of course, we have to make sure that we are on the right path first of all. You have to figure that out, and then just be stick on that without any deviation.
Yeah, that's the challenge in this life, right? So with that's you know kindly the administration in Harrisburg is arranging these regular classes. So one of the functions of that is to help us keep these ideas and this their determination in our mind, because otherwise it's easy to get distracted. And there's an interesting purport in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that where Prabhupada says something to the effect, I don't have the exact words, but even if one thinks, even if one thinks that the Hare Krishna movement is full of pseudo devotees, he says, and even if one thinks that there are many envious people in the Hare Krishna movement, still one should stick in the association of devotees because human beings are social animals. And if we don't associate with devotees, then we'll be sure to associate with materialists, and that will bring our downfall. So this association especially means discussing these, hearing these transcendental topics from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and uh, Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, and others. So that gives us life. Uh, so, uh, and, uh, associating with devotees also outside that classes as well, inviting people into their home. Dadati pratigannati guyamakyati prichtiti bhunte bhojayate chaiva. Those are essential qualities and activities that nourish bhukti bhojayate sadvidam priti lakshanam. These are loving exchanges. We want to have love, and love is there in Krishna, but also uh, that love is reflected in one's relationship with devotees as best can be done. What do you think? What have you found helpful, dear Krishna Prabhu? You've been around for a while, I think. How long have you been around for?
Um, yeah, in ISKCON, definitely Hare Krishna movement, almost 12 years, little more than that.
Wow, that's a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, before that, I was interested in spirituality since probably school time. So it was little probably easier for me because I went to many many spiritual organizations before that.
Oh yeah.
So
What stood out in the Krishna consciousness fold?
yeah,
What?
yeah. I mean, the day came in contact, I started getting answers to because I already felt that there is something more, which is not known to me. And here I got the opportunity, the philosophy, just not the deity worship, just not some mantra, just not some books, but the real knowledge. And devotees were actually answering all the questions. They were accepting the challenge to ask any question. Like uh, in ISKCON, we always say, any questions after, like you ask any questions, any comment. That's a big challenge, open challenge. So that's an opportunity to clarify all our doubts. So it's a real educational, spiritual educational institute, which is needed. Um,
Yeah.
that stood out for me.
And now that you've taken that, you can also instruct others. That's so nice.
Yeah, and
And
everything is based on scriptures, the real scriptures. So that
yeah,
is another.
Guru
Yeah,
Sadhu Shastra.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's not just somebody made up something. Srila
Right.
Prabhupada, when the first lecture he gave at Sunday, and when I was there in 1971, in Brooklyn, Henry Street, he said, so please try to understand this philosophy, he said. You try to understand this philosophy. It's not something manufactured by me or by my men, he said. Not something manufactured. So try to understand. We have so many books, he said. But if you don't like that, you don't like to do that, then come, chant and dance with us, take prasad and go home. That is also okay. So he said like that. I thought that was quite interesting, how he said.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. So much nectar there. Especially when you talk about God brothers and Srila Prabhupada and things that happen. We very much like to hear those vast times of the pure devotee of the Lord Srila Prabhupada. Jai. Any final comments by the Buddhi? If not, then thank you, Prabhu, for coming on to give us a wonderful lecture. Again,
Thank you for the
inspire us.
opportunity.
Jai. Thank you, Buddhis, for coming on to here. Okay.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha,
Kripa
Kripasindhideva
Sundhe
Chapajitanam
Tanam
Pavanebhyo.
Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Jai.
Oh.
Have a nice Krishna conscious day. Hare
Thank you.
Krishna. Jai. Thank you again, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Jai Mataji.